Here we go. Frank Seravalli from Daily Faceoff. Frank, how you doing?
Liam, I'm good. I'm glad that Boardsy is off the screen because I'm not talking to him today if he's going to wear that jersey.
What's up, brother?
Yeah, you can take it off or you can just delete yourself.
I'll take myself off.
There you go. Frank, before we get into obviously the biggest news around the NHL that you broke yesterday about the Arizona Coyotes, I wanted to ask you about the Oilers game last night. No Connor McDavid for Edmonton, but they come out 5-1 winners over the Vegas Golden Knights. What did you make of the performance yesterday?
Obviously really impressive, and I would say to me the biggest thing is if there were Oiler fans, and I sensed that this was a I don't want to say like heightened awareness, but I think there's been certainly some trepidation, and we talked about this last week about potentially, and it doesn't seem likely right now, but potentially going up against the Golden Knights in round one. If that were to happen, you want to go in feeling good. And so check that off for the Oilers. That's a big one. Obviously the answer of you never want to find out, you never want to have the question posed to you, but if we need to play with Connor McDavid, what does that look like? And so that's another good thing to learn. And I came away from that game coupled with the last two for Vegas going, is Vegas really as scary as I thought they were 3 weeks ago? And the answer to that is no.
Yeah, I mean, that game on Friday against Arizona, I know Alec Martinez had his goal called off, but to still allow 6 goals in the third period to Arizona is a crazy thing to have done to you. But do you have an idea of how long McDavid could be out for? Are they basically just taking it game by game and just making a decision by then?
Yeah, he was. I mean, if we were in a playoff situation, meaning season on the line or you're in the playoffs themselves, my guess is McDavid would have been in the lineup last night. I think this is a pure day-to-day, see how you feel when you wake up kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how they're approaching it. Hey, let's be on the cautious side here, because as exciting as the Art Ross and the 100 assists are, what matters more is having this team be led by its superstar when it matters most, and you want him at the peak of his powers.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people are just assuming, that maybe Vancouver's the next time we see him. I know they play Arizona on Friday, but Vancouver could obviously be a massive game. What did you make of Dylan Holloway yesterday? His first game back from his recall, gets the 5th goal of the game from his mistake, but he seemed pretty comfortable out there.
He did, and I'd like to see more. I want more Holloway playing time. I want more speed in the Oilers lineup. I want all of those attributes that he brings. He's just a little bit different than everyone else. And I think not everyone else, I should say, in the bottom 6. And, certainly brings an element to the table that I think the Oilers should try and harness a little bit better.
Do you have any Oilers questions, BM, before I move on?
Yeah, Frank BaggedMilk here. Just checking in for Tyler Yaremchuk on Thursday. I want to go back to Connor for a second, because you kind of nailed what I'm thinking too. Yes, it would be nice to have the division. Yes, it would be nice to have the Art Ross trophy, but could you see him kind of going through the weekend not playing against Arizona or Vancouver? Or do you think that chasing the division with the Canucks right there in sight could be a push to get him back on the ice?
I could see the temptation. I just don't know why it matters. And in fact, I would argue that if the playoffs were to begin tomorrow, for the Oilers, even regardless of last night's result, I'd much rather them, if I'm an Oiler fan, face the Kings than the Golden Knights. And I know the Kings have played well, but there's something about having already gone to LA twice over each of the last 2 playoff runs and conquering them, that you're not entering it with any fear. And I don't think that means that you're going to overlook them in the process, because if we're being real, the Oilers really kind of started out both of those last 2 series somewhat sluggishly, if I remember correctly, and got it together. This Kings team, I think, is incomplete. I think they obviously don't have the pedigree that the Golden Knights do. They certainly don't have when you look at the Golden Knights and there's just, when they're on the top of their game, there's an it factor. I don't get that at all with the Kings. And I think the Kings also are a bit flawed. So I get that the way they try and slow the game down, the way they try and clog things up, might not be the prettiest series, but if I were an Oiler fan, I don't know that I'd want to go toe to toe with Vegas quite yet.
What do you make of some of these races for the wild card, Frank? You got a team like St. Louis just will not die in the West, and on the East, you've got, for some reason, the Penguins are still alive. Like, what are you making of some of these playoff races on both sides?
I don't really view St. Louis as an authentic playoff contender. I know mathematically, obviously, they're still there. They're missing a game that Vegas has in hand. Plus, there's no margin for error. 3 games left, must win all 3, must get 6 points. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. Not to say it's impossible, but you need some help. And when it comes to the East, I mean, when you have a pillow fight that's ongoing, as long as this one has, what you open yourself up to is for someone to come in and just deliver a knockout blow. And for the Flyers and potentially the Red Wings, that's kind of what we're looking at here. The Caps, an enormous win earlier this week over the Wings. We're looking, in my view, and I know what the math says, in my view, we're looking at, if I were to stack the teams up, and I'm kind of just not on this graphic, but I'm putting the Islanders in the playoffs based on how they've played and how little they've given up. As you see them there at 85 points, obviously it's still in the mix for them to fall out, but that seems like it makes some sense. We're kind of looking at basically one of Caps or Pens for that 8th seed, and it kind of is fitting, isn't it? Caps and Pens after all these years, 2 teams on similar timelines, generational talents, flawed rosters, disappointing seasons. For it to come down to this, it's kind of amazing that that's what the story is.
Yeah, I think for Pittsburgh to be in this spot after trading Gensel and just the way everything was going leading up to the deadline, is a credit to Crosby and all those guys. But obviously, the big news around the NHL, Frank, is news you broke yesterday about the Arizona Coyotes. It started with the NHL making 2 schedule drafts for next season for Arizona and then potentially a team in Utah. And then can you just give maybe a brief recap of everything that's kind of gone down at the moment?
Oh man, that's how long do we have? It's been a lot. This has been weeks ongoing. I would say as best as I can tell you, as accurately as I can tell you without getting roped into semantics and word choice and everything else. So you pick how you want to define this, whether they have a verbal agreement or they've agreed to terms or they are closing in on agreeing to terms, whatever, however way you'd like to couch it. That's sort of where the process is. And what that means is, in terms of an agreement, is that Alex Meruelo, the owner of the Coyotes, will sell the franchise back to the NHL, I believe, for $1 billion. Then the NHL will take that franchise and on the same day sell it to Ryan Smith of Smith Entertainment Group in Salt Lake City and relocate the team to Salt Lake City for $1.2 or $1.3 billion. So the spread there between 1 and 1.2 or 1.3, that's the relocation fee, which then gets sprinkled to 29 owners, including Daryl Cates. Seattle and Vegas, I do not believe, get to wet their beak. And that's sort of where things stand right now. There's no paperwork. There's many layers and I believe lawyers working around the clock on this. And I think everyone is slightly nervous, not to say it's going to fall apart, just that Alex Meruelo, the owner, has been really combatant and headstrong at varying points in the process. He's gotten in line of late over the last couple of weeks with $1 billion on the line, but there's still some hesitancy in the people I talk to saying, just wait until there's signatures on it before it's officially official.
Assuming everything goes through, Frank, and just that they moved to Utah. What does that mean for the players? Are they going to have some kind of like grievance or something through the PA where they're just like, oh, I guess we play in Utah now? Or the players just have to live with it? They just got to deal with it.
It's life. I've seen so much belly aching on social media. When you get traded, I don't hear any of the same, oh my God, these guys have families. And like, I understand that there is kids in school and people are probably going to lose their jobs. I'm not making light of any of that. I'm completely empathetic and sympathetic to what is kind of an abrupt situation. But no one, and I mean no one, signed their contract with the Arizona Coyotes thinking that this wasn't at least a sliver of a possibility. So I'd like to think that everyone went in eyes wide open. And to answer your question about the financial part of this, the NHLPA has been pushing for a solution in Arizona forever. So the solution here is to move the team. It's better for the overall health of the league. It's better for the overall health of the players because more revenue equals more dollars. And what that means in terms of making everything right, there's also a relocation stipend that's going to go to players that will cover the cost of everything out of pocket that they need to spend. Closing cost, vehicle, transportation, moving expenses, even something as simple as, hey, I need to go to the DMV and get a new driver's license. All of those things will be repaid and reimbursed by an agreement with the NHL and NHLPA. So not really understanding the back and forth on social media of why we should feel bad for these guys. I mean, this is normal course of business in pro sports.
Isn't it wild that it's 15 years ago now that Balsillie tried to buy the team in bankruptcy court? It's wild that it's dragged on this long.
It's 2 decades in the making. I think it extends even further back than that. I mean, we're talking 2005 bankruptcy court, Glendale. I mean, I can remember the coverage, writers from Toronto flying back and forth regularly. This has been a saga. This has been longer than a saga. It's been a disaster and a black hole that this team has been wandering in the desert for so long that I say that not as a pot shot, but I'm actually a believer in the Arizona market. I think the NHL coming back into Arizona in due time when you finally do get an arena built is the right move. It's just that I think there was so much toxic energy with this franchise, this owner, this situation that I think change was necessary.
That's a question I had for you, Frank. Like, is the NHL ready to even expand? Like, obviously not today, and it wouldn't be for a few years, but even in 4 years' time, is that a good time for the NHL to go to 33 teams?
I mean, I have my own thoughts on this. And those would be, I think the league is a little bit watered down right now. And I think adding 2 more teams will only exacerbate that. I would say that for a league that has struggled to generate new HRR, hockey related revenue, the answer isn't just throwing 2 more teams and new revenue into the pot. If you're not, that's artificial growth. And I don't mean it's fake. It's just that you're not actually solving the problem, which is your business isn't growing. You can't just add 2 new teams and be like, look at the 30% growth. Like, no, that's not how it works. Seattle, Vegas, they've injected new life, new money into the pot. And so I do think they need to solve that ultimately before and address those issues before trying to expand. Will that happen before they decide to go to 34 teams? I'm not sure. I mean, Tillman Fertitta, owner of the Houston Rockets, was in New York last week for meetings with Gary Bettman and quoted in the Houston Chronicle yesterday saying he's working hard on trying to get an NHL team. Kind of feels to me like the NHL this is again, just my personal opinion, the NHL is working hard to try and dangle some red meat out there for owners that may or may not have been upset about how this whole Coyotes thing unfolded, in that why did we have to do this and fork over $1 billion for a franchise that isn't worth $1 billion to get that small of a relocation fee?
Do you have anything? Last question comes from our inbox, Frank, and it's a Great Clips inbox question. If this was all to happen, do you see a division realignment maybe in the future too if Utah was to come in? Or do you think it just slots in nicely?
No, I think it slots in perfectly. I love the map work by our guy Zach Lang yesterday. Don't think the NHL has any intention to change the current divisional lineup. That might change if you go to 34, but for the foreseeable future, I would say that it's likely going to stay as is. And you didn't ask me, but you keep talking about the Utah Yetis. You got to chop the S off. It's got to just be Yeti, Utah Yeti, and it's like deer. It can be plural. The Yeti are here. No one's going to say, hey, there's a pack of Yetis. It's just there's a pack of Yeti.
That is true. Well, when I looked it up yesterday, the elk is...
Are we going to do this elks thing now too, or what?
Maybe. Is it elks or elk?
Both.
No offense, but we only talk about real professional sports here.
Not the Edmonton Elks.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
There you go.
Orgy, we told you no talking.
Love you, Frank.
See you, Frank.
guys.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.